In this game? No, this game is strict. You know, it's funny, when we did Mortal Kombat versus DC, we followed it with a game that was purely Mortal Kombat. You know, we went back to all of the essence of what made a Mortal Kombat game. And this game is really the essence of what is a superhero game. So everything is, you know, knocking people into outer space and running around the world and doing things that are just insanely over the top. That's what we really consider this game, is kind of like the other half of that MK versus DC, where it's purely a superhero experience.
Mortal Kombat, at the end of the fights, if you had a weakened opponent, you had a big finishing move. Is that going to come across here as a similar thing? Or not?
No. The obviously Batman and Superman, they don't kill, and so we can't do that. Although there are some features that are going to be introduced in the future that do make the end of the fight a lot more interesting. But that's a subtle thing.
Does the story mode tie in with the new 52 DC universe, or the original DC universe, or is it just completely separate?
You know what? What I find so fascinating about the DC universe, they've been represented in just about every form of media I can think of. You know, it's like, obviously originally in comic books, they expanded into movies, a number of video game versions. You know, Arkham City, the Lego Batman games, the Brave and the Bold, all of these things. We really want to carve out yet our own niche of it. If you were to ask me, what does it resemble the closest, I probably would say the New 52. But we're not trying to be, you know, modeling off the New 52. So we're really trying to do something that's hopefully will be like an Arkham City thing, where it's going to be something that's considered yet another version of these DC Universe characters.
Awesome, because the costumes all look very New 52.
Yeah, there's some similarities in there, but it's not strictly based on it. You know.
A lot of fighting games suffer in the online space, especially Australians with low latency. You guys approached online in a different way?
Yeah, you know, I think this is probably our 4th or 5th game that we've done that has an online component, and I think every single one we try to add something to really address the various, you know, latencies that with the different connections and whatnot. But this I can safely say is our strongest online component that we've had in terms of the gameplay.
Who wrote the storyline for Justice?
It was actually written by our story writers in-house. You know, we had a lot of cooperation with DC. There's actually 2 comic book writers that we've worked with before. Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray, and they've written a number of stuff for the other, some of the DC comics, and they were kind of like, you know, guiding us in terms of, you know, making sure that our characters were consistent with their behavior. They would say, you know, Superman would never say this, Batman would never do that, and to keep us within the, you know, I guess the personality of the characters, and so it was a great collaboration between them.
Is the multiplayer just going to be 1v1, or is there going to be a 2v2 multiplayer, or?
Well, there's a number of single player experiences. There's the story mode, and then there's this other mode that's kind of similar to Mortal Kombat's Challenge Tower. Then you go into online mode, and then you go to 2. We don't have a tag team because like instead of the extra 4 characters, it's our arenas. It's the multiple arenas and all the basically the memory to go in there. But there's not 4 players that play at once, though.
I feel like I'm being greedy. Is there a possibility of Injustice sort of branch out into possibly being a beat-em-up game, or something into a larger DC universe world?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, we have a lot of confidence in the game. We really feel like it's going to do well, but it's impossible to kind of guess what's going to happen after the fact. There has been discussion of, you know, obviously they're going to be doing a comic book, and everybody's kind of waiting with bated breath, so, you know, new opportunities coming up that other forms of media and other game types too.
One of the cool things about Mortal Kombat, when you took a Vita, that it had, you know, a lot of touchscreen. Are we talking about the same sort of thing for, say, Wii U and the Vita systems when you guys brought it out today? Is they going to be utilizing that experience?
Yeah, well, we definitely are, like, you know, the game's still like 6 months out, and we're definitely like experimenting with different control schemes to try to take advantage of these unique things. We haven't announced anything yet, but that's definitely on our list. Yeah.
outside one, are you planning on licensing figurines, collectibles, and things like your Injustice characters and things like that? Or?
I know that's in discussion. I guess they haven't announced anything, but I know I've seen images and stuff like that.
So the US Collector's Edition has been announced, which has got a really cool figurine, and we're working on an Australian version at the moment, but yet to announce. Dan?
Where would you position Injustice in terms of its accessibility relative to games like Street Fighter, for example, the previous Mortal Kombat? Is it more of a hardcore fighting game or more?
Well, we absolutely are aware that there's a number of DC fans that aren't necessarily fighting game fans. So we definitely are consciously putting in features that are as accessible as possible. At the same time, we know that there are like these, you know, the evil players and all these guys who count frames and really dissect the game, that we're going to be putting features in there for them. But for the most part, you know, our objective is to get as many new people into the whole fighting game.
Do you have an example of something that you put in specifically for hardcore players?
Oh yeah, there's a number of moves that can only be done like in the middle of a combo. You can, you know, branch into different special versions of a move. Like Superman has like his heat vision, and there's an enhanced version that can only be done inside of a combo. Now the casual player is probably not going to be able to, you know, notice that, but you know, once the other guys are kind of digging deep, they'll discover that. And kind of, we have this whole system that's kind of built underneath the combo system.
Yeah, obviously the Mortal Kombat series were very violent, and like the most recent one got banned here. So, and you pointed out that. And you pointed out like Batman and Superman can't kill. So, what kind of age demographic would this game be catered towards in terms of violence?
I guess I'm not as familiar with what the rating system is here. In the United States, we have, you know, M is mature, T is for teen, which is kind of like the next one down, and that's what this game is going to be there. So it's certainly going to have blood. We're going to have the characters are going to be bruised, and their costumes are going to be damaged as well too. We weren't really showing a lot of that stuff here, and so it'll be like a visceral experience. But we're not going to cut Batman's head off or anything crazy like that.
With the single player mode, are you going to be taking sort of a more traditional structure, or are you going to do it like the previous Mortal Kombat, where it's like this integrated narrative?
It's going to be like an integrated narrative, very much like you know, like a big, you know, blockbuster superhero experience.
Okay, so you sort of start out playing one character, then you switch as the narrative continues over.
Yes.
Luke, you said you were trying to, I guess, bring as many people into the game as possible. What about on the other side, the hardcore fighting fans? Are you looking at features to move for like tournaments?
Yeah, I guess ideally we would like, you know, everybody in the world would like to play the game, and we're certainly putting a lot of effort into features that we think the casual player won't even notice or appreciate. I mean, but I think that's just the nature of, you know, the hardcore guys versus the casual guys. So you know, ideally we'd like to appeal to all of them, but at the same time, from our perspective, we do realize there are big fans of these superhero, you know, characters that aren't necessarily Mortal Kombat players or Street Fighter players or something like that. We really want to make sure that they have a good time playing the game.
Any more questions?
Well, hey, you said that you're trying to put in as many characters as possible. Are you mostly looking at characters that are, say, titled on, like, have their own titles at the moment, or are you looking at active minor characters? Are you going to see any obscure potential?
There's definitely some obscure ones. I mean, we're trying to hit, you know, the big most recognizable ones, obviously. But we also have some really obscure ones that I'm sure some people are going to be like, you know, who's that? But the hardcore DC people will be really into, you know. We also have a great opportunity with DLC. One thing that surprised me was, you know, I'm not sure how familiar I was with a character named Lobo. He's like this big, you know, broody character. I wasn't very familiar with him, but there's a insane fan base that really wants to see Lobo in our game. And so, you know, we're really hearing it from all of the different, you know, kind of the whole span of the DC characters, and some of them are kind of like obscure ones that I gotta like Wikipedia or something like that. I've never even heard of them. Like, you know, Blue Beetle, who's that? I didn't know who that was. But big ones like Lobo and stuff, where there's a great opportunity for DLC. We really want to do something crazy with our kind of, you know, maybe explore guest characters and stuff like that.
Like a Prussian versus Heat.
Yeah.
So will we be seeing Oracle kind of facing off with someone Murderball style in a wheelchair?
I don't know about that. I guess from the standpoint of, you know, like I said, the DLC, we really want them to be events like somebody's like, oh, I can't believe it. Right.
Are there going to be many options for sort of alternative costumes, whether just to unlock or, you know, DLC?
Yes, absolutely, like you would believe. There's a number of packs that are coming out. Some are related to pre-ordering for things like EV and whatnot. And there's a number of themes that we have a big list of. You know, the Red Sun series. You know, we could do like an Arkham City version of Batman, or a you know, we're not going to do a Lego Batman, but something something like a different kind of type of thing. And so that's the one thing, that there's just this gigantic palette of different interpretations of these characters that we're definitely going to be exploring.
One of the things that sort of really defines the Mortal Kombat series, I think, is its sense of humor. And I was wondering if that carries over into this, and if so, in what way?
This game probably won't be as tongue-in-cheek as Mortal Kombat is. You know, Mortal Kombat is almost like half being a parody of itself, you know, and it's not, you know, the violence is just so extreme, you can't, you know, you just can't take it seriously. And this game is a little bit more serious. It's a little bit more of like, you know, this is reality, the fate of the world and all that stuff. So it probably doesn't have quite that humor that Mortal Kombat did.
All right. One more question after this one, and then we have to wrap it up.
It's really quickly, I mean, going back to Mortal Kombat versus DC, I mean, a lot of the things that you're saying are in this game are actually things that were in that game as well. You know, knocking them into other parts of the arena and not so much utilising the arena. What is the major difference, like in the playability side, between what you did a couple of years ago with that game?
Yeah.
And with this one? Like, I mean, they look similar. I mean, the last one looked good.
Yeah. Well, the major difference, without a doubt, is the arena. That is, the identity of this game is the arenas and the roles that they play in the environment. And then on top of that is the different types of characters. And then, you know, there's only like 3 arenas in this build here, but you know, there's some really crazy ones that we have that, you know, when somebody picks a different character, you change your mind if you pick somebody else because you know you're playing, you know, in this particular arena. And so that's the kind of strategy we're seeing with people, where it's not just, oh, did you pick Scorpion, I'm going to pick Sub-Zero, but it's, you know, you pick Scorpion and you're playing in this arena, and I need to do this because I know you have this you could spam this move right here and I can counter with that. So that's really what kind of separates this game from the ADC.
Last one, anyone?
With the interaction with Batman in the Batcave, will we have an advantage being in the Batcave?
No. We thought about that, but I think that, you know, with the you know, again, with the variety of things that can happen, the unpredictability, it would probably make the game a little bit more difficult to balance if we had, you know, certain, because also some characters aren't going to have an environment that is based on them. And there's a number of, you know, Batman ones, and but there might not be, you know, a logo background or something.
All right, guys, there we go. Thank you very much for all coming along today. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so again, thank you for all making hands-on stations.